How are you today?
Good afternoon, Chuck. Good afternoon, Charles. Great to be with you.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me today on the Q.A.C. team podcast. Let's go ahead and get started and tell our audience who you are and what you do.
I'm Elan Becker, and I own Laptop Exits. I provide bookkeeping and accounting services for e-commerce, CPG companies, and truckers. If you move it, touch it, feel it, and sell it, I account for it. I've been in the accounting world for over 10 years, and I'm passionate about giving small business owners peace of mind with their company's cash flow and financial statements.
Nice. And so that's a big role.
Oh yeah, for sure. You deal with the
A lot of
numbers.
moving pieces, right?
Yeah, when you deal with the numbers, you want the business owners to believe it, and then the problem is that if you give them the bad news, they're like, "Wait a minute, where's this number coming from?" And then you have to be their guide, and you have to show them, and you just have to be that you know passenger on the bus because they're the bus driver.
Exactly. So go ahead and tell us. So why did you decide to be a business owner?
I became a business owner for over 7 years out of necessity due to either being laid off or fired 6 times in 3 years ever since graduating from Towson University in 2015 with my Bachelor of Science in accounting. And additionally, it was becoming clear to me that being at a job wasn't about bringing results. It was about doing endless busy work that I was forced to do, but no one cared about. And also, 95% of companies don't care about making investments in their accounting department, which companies see as an overhead cost instead of a cash flow driver for their business. And then if I wanted results, I realized I had to create my own company and be able to serve my own clients. That's what I did. And the final straw was I worked for a cybersecurity company 2 years ago, and my boss called me a factory worker. And I knew at that point it was time to call quits then and go out on my own, do my own thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important. And we've got a common thread here when I interview. The common thread of people is, we have this corporate job and it's like we see a dead end and here we are doing our own thing.
I think corporations are really that serious about growing their businesses because the problem is that when you work at these big corporations, I mean, whether you're a Fortune 50, 100, 500, it's one where the problem is that you're working within a system. So the people who end up rising through the ranks in those companies, they know how to work the system, but they don't necessarily know how to create their own. So they work in this little paradigm. And then at the end of the day, it's one where, oh, okay, like they're working within a box. And then what do they have outside the box?
Yeah, right. That is so true. You work in this confined little box, and this is what we do. This is how our company runs. Here's our core mission and values, and that's it. That's what we follow. We don't want to change.
All the fluffy stuff.
We don't want the fluffy stuff, right? But it's so true. So tell us a little bit. You gave us some background of what you did. So tell us a little bit more about why you chose this industry.
I mean, I chose my industry specifically within the e-commerce and consumer product space because for the first 4 to 5 years of my career, I was working in government contracting, and so what's really hard about that industry is that when you're providing services to governmental agencies, I mean, whether it's Department of Defense or the state government, the local government, the problem is that the services that you provide to them, you can't relate to it as a consumer. If I come to you or if I come to one of your audience members and say, hey, I want to sell you IT transformation and business enterprise services, they're going to look at you with the blank question mark. What the heck is that?
Yeah.
But there and those big government agencies, they understand what it is. And it's a very highly technical service. But you and I, we need something more on a micro level that we can relate to, such as selling you a pen or selling you a laptop. And so it's one where I realized that after the end of my government contracting career, I wanted to be able to be in an industry where I can relate to something both as an end user, but also, as a consumer. So
Yeah.
it's much easier for me to connect with business owners that way. And the fact that also I used to own multiple e-commerce businesses, and I found it very fulfilling knowing that the products I was selling to other consumers, I could use them myself.
Yeah. So your service is pretty much a niche market for e-commerce companies, platforms.
Yeah, especially. And one of the things that I really love about this industry is I can relate to the business owners on a personal level because they know that an accountant who's owned their own e-commerce business in the past is going to know exactly what the challenges are facing a typical e-commerce store owner.
That's true. That's a good point you brought up because That's something that, takes somebody like me who really not involved too much in e-commerce other than the affiliate link that I have, I don't know
Yeah.
much about it. I'd reach out to you and be like, hey, help me out here. Tell me a little bit about, the process here and what do we do?
Yeah, it's like you buy everything on Amazon, right? You buy
Yeah,
your toiletries, you buy clocks, you buy whatever it is you need. And that's e-commerce because you're buying goods and services for yourself over the
yeah,
World Wide Web instead of going into your typical retail store that's
yeah,
located on the street corner near you.
yeah, yeah. One of the things that and correct me if I'm not accurate on this or not, but
Yeah,
one of the things that I don't personally, and this is my personal opinion, is
yeah,
when I want to support, a small business, I go online, I go to the website, I
yeah,
click the product, I purchase. It takes me to an Amazon web store.
yeah,
How? Why? I thought this was a small business who was wanting to do things on their own. Is that
yeah.
like the shortcut to this, or
Not
laziness, or can you
necessarily.
explain that?
Yeah, not necessarily. What ends up happening is that Amazon has a couple of different programs for small businesses, especially when it
Okay.
comes to order and fulfillment, because that's actually one of the biggest challenges of the supply chain. It's one where you hold all these goods and services on your balance sheet, and then you got to figure out, okay, the customer places an order, and then it can be really tedious to do it yourself when it comes to packing it, putting on the packaging slip, weighing the merchandise, figuring out the shipping rates. And so a small business owner thinks, well, what can I do? Take that off my plate. And so because Amazon is such a established logistics network when it comes to fulfilling all kinds of merchandise, well, I can just outsource it to them and, for whatever fees they offer, just takes off my plate, gives me peace of mind.
Peace of mind. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't think about that. Because here I'm thinking, I'm supporting a small business, but yeah, I'm supporting Amazon. Am I accurate with
That
that statement,
Amazon
or is that
has a lot of small businesses on there. I mean, if you
yeah,
think about it, I would say about 90% of merchants on Amazon are small mom and pop kind of stores.
yeah, and there technically is what keeping Amazon growing is because small businesses are putting their platforms on Amazon, right?
Correct.
Yeah, see, that kind of gets me in my mind. I'm like, wait a minute, this hold up here. I thought this was small business, but we're in fact really giving Amazon some more power, I guess, right?
No, but also it's one where, a lot of different businesses within the e-commerce space, what they'll do is that they'll select something called multi-channel fulfillment, which is that some of the orders Amazon might fulfill, but then on the other hand, they might have other warehouse providers such as ShipBob shipping and fulfilling all the orders. So
Yeah,
actually, it's pretty useful from an economics of scale perspective when it comes to, if I don't have goods in the Amazon warehouse because I'm turning over inventory quickly, but then I have a reserve inventory, let's say ShipBob, then what can happen is that ShipBob can then fulfill the gap.
gotcha. Yeah, and your part is taking off the accounting part from these small businesses. You'd like to help them out, right? So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges that you face getting us going and working on what you're doing.
I mean, I think the challenge is that when you're running this kind of a business, and especially with a niche of a business, it's actually one where you have to figure out where the customer is because it's one where there's a bunch of different Facebook groups and other social media groups that say, "Hey, I'm an e-commerce store owner." But then when you think about it, the problem is that if you're a very established store owner, let's say you're making over $1 million a year, you're not going to really have time to go on a Facebook group and then try to endlessly be on social media. It's a time suck. So what ends up happening is that a lot of these e-commerce groups on social media, whether it's Facebook and others, it's one where it's attracting more of the beginner store owners who are trying to figure out, okay, how do I select product? How do I create the listing? And ultimately, the problem is that they're not at the point yet where they're bringing established cash flow into their business. And so it's one where if I say, okay, I'm charging $2,000 a month for bookkeeping, they're just not going to be able to afford it because it's one where they don't even have enough sales yet to have proof of concept. And so then what happens is that let's say, you tell me, hey, Elon, you could just go to your local chamber of commerce, BNI International, or some small business meetup. Well, then the problem is that that's not even the right niche because it's one where they're the painter and they could be just the local real estate agent. And that's not my niche, what I serve. And so the other challenge then becomes is that even in e-commerce and CPG, trucking, whatever the case may be, it's one where even if, let's say, the business is doing well top line, right? Because have you heard, I just want to ask you this question. Have you ever heard all these ads or other stories of people saying, hey, I made seven figures in my business? Have you heard that a lot?
Yeah, you do, don't you?
Yeah, you've heard all that craziness. Well, what
It's
happens is
craziness, right?
commerce, it's one where they could be doing 1 million, 1.5, 2 million bucks a year. And I kind of wonder, why do they actually just say that? But
Why don't you
nonetheless,
just say,
it,
yeah,
yeah, it's crazy. It's one where the problem is that even if they're doing all that top line, they could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt because they're tying up so much capital into fulfilling these huge purchase orders in order to turn over the inventory to generate that kind of top line revenue. And so then the challenge becomes it's like, wait a minute, okay, let's say I'm doing $1 million a year, but then I'm only doing, uh, let's say, 50,000 net profit. Are you going to even have enough left over to be able to even, afford a really solid accountant because you're constantly figuring out, okay, I'm selling this inventory. And let's say for a typical Amazon store owner, you're waiting 15 days to get paid.
yeah,
That's a huge, huge challenge, especially when it's like, wait a minute, okay, I've got all these bills I got to pay. The bills are due at the end of the month, but I'm not getting my payouts
yeah,
from Amazon. So it's put such a strain on the cash flow. So it's also a challenge figuring out who's cash flow positive and who's cash flow negative. So in and of itself, someone doing $1 million, it could be deceptive.
yeah,
They might not even be doing well, even at $1 million, $1.5 million. So it's one where the challenge is somebody who is in growth mode and they need to understand not just the importance of solid financials, but also the benefits of having those financials so that when you're ready to get a business loan, when you're ready to pay taxes, when you're ready to take on investors,
mm,
you know that the bookkeeping is going to be so important.
yeah. And I think too, a lot of entrepreneurs kind of miss this step, right? Because they don't think about the books. They don't think about that accounting part because, well, I'm so busy selling and moving product and doing
Yeah.
this and that, they don't properly align themselves in their bookkeeping to keep track of this, correct?
Well, it's not just that, but bookkeeping in and of itself is a much more challenging thing within the e-commerce space because what happens is that let's say someone is typical e-commerce owner, they have a QuickBooks account doing their bookkeeping there, and then they're seeing within the transaction list, okay, hey, I got a $4,000 deposit. The problem is that's deceptive because QuickBooks is not going to report all the fees that you paid on that sale for the month. And then sometimes you're getting sales from one month to the next, and then you're having to wait a while to get it because Amazon is moving your sales revenue constantly, what they call their Amazon account level reserve. So
Gotcha.
what then happens is like, wait a minute, what are the fees I'm paying? What are all the costs I'm paying my business for that month? Well, what you then have to do is you have to get a bridge software. I'll give you one example. It's called A2X, which is that it ends up creating a feed between your Amazon account and QuickBooks, where it actually will export all the fees that you've paid for that month. So now it's like, oh, okay, now I have accurate fees, I have accurate cost of goods. Now I can figure out,
Okay.
okay, what's my true profit?
Yeah. And I was going to say, that's what the part, right? So you want to get down to the true profit because every day you got a $4,000 deposit, but your true profit might be $1,100, not the full 4,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely that, but also it's one where what gets even more complicated is figuring out, well, how are you going to track your cost of goods? What do you put in cost of goods? And
Yeah.
then, are you on cash basis or accrual basis? So that in and of itself gets even more challenging in that space.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people they get that confused too with, is it cash accrual? How are we going to work this out? How do we move the business forward?
Yeah,
Keeping our booking straight.
that's why they need a financial guide.
That's why they need you.
Yeah.
That's when you come in. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about the process of, from the time we reach out to you to how does it work?
Well, the way it works is that they can go on my website, laptopexits.com, and they can pick a time on my calendar. I have Calendly on the website. And additionally, they can also email me at Elan, ELAN, at laptopexits.com where they can tell me all about their business, what their needs are, and we can create a custom proposal for that business. Every client of mine is white glove because other accountants, it's like primary care. Think of it this way. I've explored an interesting business model around this where think about a typical CPA firm, and I'd love to know your experience about this. So you call your CPA firm down the street, and they're always so busy, right? They can't really give you the attention. They can't really truly sit down with you and fully discuss things in depth. Like, have you had that experience before?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what
Yeah.
I'm doing is that I take a limited amount of clients so I can give them the true time and attention that they need. I take on a very limited amount of clients because I know that if I take on so many clients, I'm not going to give them the attention that they deserve. So what I can do is that they can email me, we can sit down to free consultation, sit down in depth, what they need, and I'll get them a proposal just tailored to their business.
Tailored to the business. Yeah, I think that's important, right? We want to make sure that when we reach out to people or people reach out to us, we want to make sure that
Yeah.
we're giving them that attention they need to finding out exactly where they are in their business,
Yeah.
what you need to do to set it up, and where they're headed. What's the future look like for them? That's important.
For sure. Because, what a lot of people don't realize is that your client may say, oh, I need bookkeeping for the month. Now please go help me do bookkeeping. And then I'm looking at their books. I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. You don't need bookkeeping. You need a full year's worth of cleanup. And so that's a whole different ball game from
Yeah,
doing just a typical count for my transactions, give me my profit and loss statement for the month and call it a day.
yeah. And that in itself can be scary, right? Look at the profit and loss and go
Yeah.
like, oh, what happened here in the past year, right? Yeah.
Well, it can be scary in the sense that if the client doesn't realize how important it is to have accurate financials, they could
Yeah.
be staring at an IRS letter one day. They say, "Oh yeah, we're going to audit you."
Yeah. That's a scary
And that's
statement
not
in
pleasant.
itself. Right. That's a scary statement right there. We don't know, no audits, no audits.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So, Elan, tell us what's the expectations for your business in the next year or two. What are you hoping to accomplish?
Well, what I'm looking to accomplish is that there's going to be two divisions in my business, and I'm moving toward a concierge medicine model, but specifically adopted for accountants, and then modifying the model a little bit. So what I'm looking to do is take on a max of about 20 clients within the bookkeeping and the tax side of things. So I divide it between bookkeeping, payroll, sales tax, and other client services. And then the other one is once I'm certified as an enrolled agent, which I'm not yet, but I'm working toward it, is to focus on tax representation and tax controversy. Someone comes to me, they have issues with their back taxes, they need someone's going to fight for them. And I'm
Yeah.
more than willing to fight against the Internal Revenue Service. Actually, I mean, it's not easy, but it's definitely a fight I'm willing to do. And I'm willing to go deep in the trenches and have some skin in the game with it.
Yeah. Put the time and effort into actually helping these clients get
Yeah, I
get
think
going
especially one thing I
forward.
want to highlight to your listeners is that I'm not afraid to take on a very difficult project. I think that a lot of accountants, they want to run away from things that can potentially provide a lot of knowledge. They just want something that's like one and done and then just collect their fee and that's the end of it. I'm willing to take on the most difficult clients when it comes to cleanup, when it comes to trying to get all these integrations right so that make sure that they run their business correct. And the fact that no business is too difficult for me.
Yeah, and getting back to your white glove approach, right? You want to make sure
Yeah,
that even though it's messy, you're gonna get in the trenches and clean it up and make it where it needs to be.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's great. So go ahead and run down the list again of how our clients, how our listeners can contact you.
You're asking me how they can contact me?
Yeah, yeah. Just real quick, a rundown of how our listeners can contact you. How
Yeah,
we
there are two.
find you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there are
just
two
real
ways.
quick.
Yeah, there are two ways they can do it. The first is go to laptopexits.com and then scroll down to the page where my calendar is, and then they can select a time, or they can email me at elon@laptopexits.com. So it's laptopexits.com. And my first name is spelled ELAN. But also, I want to give a discount to your listeners, which is that normally I charge $2,000 a month for bookkeeping, but for your viewers, I'm going to get $500 off. So it's only $1,500 a month.
I appreciate that. Thank you. There you go, listeners. Talk to him, reach out to him. Let him he gives a free consultation. Let him, see what he can do, what you have, what you don't have, and let him get you straight.
Yeah.
Elan, thanks again for coming on to the podcast today and speaking with me. I loved it. You seem knowledgeable. I like the fact that you are willing to jump in and get dirty with our listeners who actually need your help.
Thank you, Chuck. It was awesome connecting with you today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Q.A.C. Team podcast with your host, Charles Luttrell. Connect with us on the web at QACteam.com, TikTok at Q.A.C. Team, Facebook and Instagram at QAC.team. Thanks for your support.